Hello, I'm so excited and honored and humbled to be here. I have to tell you, I've never done this before, so this will be, I guess, an experiment for both of us if this is your first time. I just want to let you know that I promise if you stay in with this whole 30 minutes, it could possibly potentially change your life. I've seen this talk that I've done in my clinic, which is a bit longer, and if you'd like to attend that, you can still call our office for this Saturday and attend. But I've seen this talk be the first step in many people's journey to getting their life back. So, with that said, over the last 14 years, I've probably helped over 4,000 people regain their health. And one of the things that I've learned is I almost sometimes feel like I live in a different world. It was once thought that the world was flat until a Greek mathematician named Eratosthenes in 250 BC came out and said, no, actually the world's round. And at first he was ridiculed, he was outcast in the scientific community, but eventually, as we know it now, it would be crazy to think that the world was flat. Well, I think of that as today in our healthcare system. I kind of look around and I don't really see it as a healthcare system. What I see is a sick, diseased management of disease care system. And I don't really see a lot of health coming from it. And what we've learned is that if you think about it, for example, if you get a mammogram, is that really preventing breast cancer or is that just early detection? Same thing with a colonoscopy. Are you really trying to prevent polyps from forming or are you looking for polyps to have them removed? See, that's not true prevention or even health. That's just simply management of disease processes. So now these things are necessary. We know that surgeries and medications in some people's cases can be necessary, but I think we can all come to the same conclusion that they're overused and they're prescribed to a lot of people, and we really should be looking for more natural solutions to be helping people. And for example, my father, though, was diagnosed with an aneurysm, and had it not been for the medical profession, he would have died. So we had 16 extra years with him until he did finally pass, but it was because of that profession we were able to keep him alive and put him in the situation. But what I'm finding is that if you're out there right now and you're watching this and you're suffering from a chronic health condition, that the medications and the treatments they're offering aren't helping you. And it's not necessarily the doctor's fault. I want you to think if you had a foot problem and you went to a dentist to help with your foot. That's obviously not going to get you any solution. If you go to a medical physician and you ask them to help you with this chronic disease process that you have, this chronic issues that you're having, they don't necessarily always have the answer. Last night, for example, I ate dinner with a neurosurgeon from U of M and his wife, who's a cardiovascular surgeon from U of M. These doctors are amazing, they're intelligent people, but if I start asking them about the detoxification pathways and what are the right sequences to help improve your gut flora, they're clueless. But the same thing goes if you ask me about how to fix a neuroblastoma in your brain or how to fix an 85% clogged artery, it's not really, I'm the wrong doctor for that. So it's who you're going to, who you're asking these questions from, or what's impacting your health. So in our office, we like to think of things as root cause or the surface cause of the problems. So if we can get to the slide where we talk about a tree. Yep. So standard medical care right now is simply addressing, if you look here, at these symptoms. For example, 1 out of every 5 people take an allergy medication. 1 out of every 3 take some type of medication for their heart. 1 out of every 6 women or 1 out of every 5 women take an antidepressant. But we know that these aren't the root causes to the problems. This is simply the surface of the problem. And the problems are going to continue to get worse until you dive deeper and look at the root cause. I practice a special branch of medicine called functional medicine. So if I can go to the next slide, I'll show you guys. With functional medicine, we like to look at things for like poor digestion. We like to look at toxins, free radicals, like we talked about in the show today, autoimmune disease. These are the root causes of people's health issues, and if we address these, you won't see as many symptoms pop up. And what all too often we hear in our clinic is people come in and they say, well, I went to my doctor, all my lab testing was normal. But the problem with that is that the doctors only typically do 2 or 3 different panels. They might do a C.F.M.P, a CBC, and a lipid panel, but that's not all the testing that's available. So with our testing, with functional medicine's testing, we can dive deeper to really look at what these root causes are and find natural solutions for our patients. One reason why I like to find natural solutions is because, for example, if you look at the next slide with medications, Zoloft is a very commonly prescribed medication. I apologize for this being up here in the way, but I'll get that fixed next time. But some of the things that we see with Zoloft, for example, which is a common antidepressant, is people that have sleepiness. They have drowsiness, fatigue, nervousness, insomnia. headaches, diarrhea, constipation. I mean, my goodness, as we read this list, you can see that if you use a pill for every ill, it's just going to lead to more pills, and it doesn't really get to that root cause of these problems. And honestly, I would be depressed if I experienced even half of these symptoms. So it's very important that we start to look deeper, and that's what functional medicine allows us to do, is we look at the body as different. We don't look at it as different systems. It's always been weird to me that if we're having, let's say, a sinus problem, that we go to a sinus doctor, eyes, ears, nose, throat doctor. We have a digestive problem, we go to a gastroenterologist. If we're having cardiovascular problems, we go to the cardiovascular doctor. But the problem with this is that we're all really one connected entire system. That if one system comes out of balance, if we can get that slide up, if one of these systems comes out of balance, it's going to affect all the other systems. You've heard it before, the knee bone's connected to the ankle bone's connected to the hip bone. These systems are all interconnected with each other, and that's what we're going to talk about in a short period of time today, in our short time we do have. Please understand, we do have a longer seminar that we can offer in our clinic, but this is going to give you a good understanding of two of the main things that we see in our office. So, the first is autoimmune disease. If we can go to the next slide, please. With autoimmune disease, it's the first or the second most common problem we see in our clinic. An autoimmune disease, if you remember, is when your body's own immune system attacks itself. So if you remember from the seminar I just did on stage, if your nervous system is being attacked by your immune system, that's called multiple sclerosis. If it's your joints and your wrists and your ankles and your spine's being attacked, that's rheumatoid arthritis. But the most common autoimmune disease we're seeing in our clinic right now is an autoimmune disease of your thyroid. Now please remember this is very important. 90% of the people out there that are watching this right now, or your family members that are taking thyroid medication, they need to know this. The number one cause for low thyroid is an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's. And what Hashimoto's does is it attacks the thyroid and disallows it from producing hormones. Once these hormones are produced, you can see that they go to the liver to get converted to create the active hormones. So you might not only have a autoimmune disease attacking your thyroid, you might also have a liver problem that's not helping the body convert to the more active hormone. So this is the things that we look at in our office to see how the body's breaking down and where these things are happening, occurring. A medication may be necessary for some people with thyroid disease. What's even more important though is let's find the cause and figure out how we can help you get better and overcome these problems. The number one cause for an autoimmune disease, what a lot of researchers are coming out and saying, and a lot would agree, the number one cause for a thyroid condition is a condition called leaky gut. Leaky gut, this is your intestinal system. This is the food, the bacteria, and the fecal matter that are out here. Over time, these tears occur and allow the food and the bacteria to leak into your blood system. Once these particles are in your blood, what do you think your immune system is going to do? That's right, it's going to start attacking the foreign invaders. Now the immune system has a cascade and it keeps attacking because it keeps leaking in. And as it keeps leaking in, the immune system keeps attacking. So what we see is autoimmunity develops. We see that food sensitivity start occurring. We see that these particles go to the brain and start affecting the brain. They start going to the joints and causing inflammation. And ultimately, the immune system doesn't just attack here anymore. It starts attacking other parts of the body, other tissues. So now if you look at the next slide, you can see that the immune system can attack every tissue in the entire organ system. So if you're having any problems with any of these organs or glands, it could be an autoimmune disease. Like we said earlier, if we go to the next slide, you'll understand that autoimmune disease now affects upwards of 20% of the population. It affects 24 to 50 million Americans. And like I said earlier, it's more common than heart disease and cancer combined. And it's the leading cause of death and illness in this country. It's also, many people are undiagnosed. And if you suspect that you might have an autoimmune disease, I want you to ask yourself, do I have a family member that takes thyroid medication? Do I take thyroid medication? Does anybody have, or do I have psoriasis, eczema, lupus? Any of these types of things can be autoimmune diseases, but we don't really think of it. Even asthma, in some cases, could be an autoimmune condition. Now, if you suspect you have an autoimmune disease, these are some of the symptoms we see. You can have skin troubles, you can have rash, hair loss, you can have speckles on your skin, you can have digestive troubles, tingling in your arms or your legs, weakness of the muscles, hot swollen joints, never-ending flu-like symptoms, chronic fatigue, and chronic I-don't-feel-good-itis. Now, I want to stop here for a second and help you understand this. It's not just a series of symptoms on a screen. What we're seeing in our office is that when people are suffering, and this may be you as well, people become more withdrawn from their family. They become withdrawn from their friends, going out with their friends because they just don't feel good. When they wake up, The second they wake up, they're just chronically fatigued. They have zero energy. These types of people also notice that they have some type of sensitivities. When they eat, they get bloating, they get gas. They just don't feel well. And so this can be, autoimmune disease can absolutely destroy somebody's life, especially if they don't know they have it and they don't know what to do about it. And that's what our clinic specializes in, because this is the unfortunate truth. Most times it takes 4 years to get diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So it takes 4 years of you complaining, but before you even go to the doctor, it might have even taken longer. It can take up to 5 doctors that you end up seeing, and ultimately a lot of people can be labeled a chronic complainer, because a lot of times when the doctors don't have an answer for why somebody's suffering, the only answer they have is, they're just chronic complainers. But that's not how I see it. I truly believe that if you're suffering, there's a reason, there's a cause, and it's my job as a physician not to blame you for feeling badly, but to help you find a solution to answer your problems. The second health culprit that we see in our office is inflammation. Now with inflammation, it can occur because of, for example, the next slide, the leaky gut slide. With leaky gut, once again, if you have all this debris and waste in your blood, where's all this blood going to be filtered through? It's going to be filtered through the next slide, which is the liver. Now, the liver can only process so much. We already have more exposure to toxins, chemicals, than we've ever had in humankind. In human history. So already our livers are working hard to process even that food that we ate this morning, that's frankenfood that our bodies don't understand. But now the body's also processing all that debris and waste from our guts, pouring that debris and waste into our blood system. If the liver can't keep up, it creates a situation where you're going to have inflammation. On inflammation, it's when you take that cell and you surround it with toxins and free radicals, and then it ends up leading to that inflamed, damaged cell. This cell on the right, once again, if you remember, it leads to heart disease, cancer, stroke, increased incidence of heart disease. But the thing that we see in our office typically when we see high inflammation levels before you get a disease is chronic I don't feel good-itis, where your body's immune system doesn't function as well as it used to, where your body's metabolism is slower than it used to, because this is the cells that you're operating from. Obviously, you want to be as close to over here as you can. As you go through life, you don't want to sprint to here, and that's what we see a lot of our patients is their full-blown inflammation levels are through the roof. And this can be diagnosed with a simple test called C-reactive protein that can diagnose you to determine how much inflammation you truly have in your body and how it's impacting your health. It's so important you get this test performed. And if you do have inflammation, you're probably going to need to contact your office, because many doctors don't know how to address this properly. When you see a toxic problem, some of the symptoms that you might have, example is brain toxicity. With brain toxicity, what we see is poor concentration. We see ADHD. We see stammering, stuttering, just like I just did there, but it's probably more nervousness than anything. We're going to have Alzheimer's, dementia. We're going to have anxiety, depression. This is where you're going to have insomnia, where you wake up between the hours of 3 or 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning and you can't go back to sleep for 2 more hours. That's a toxicity problem. You could have headaches and migraines. You can even have systemic pain if it's in your body, muscle and joint pain. It can impair your hormones. So if you're having hormonal problems and you have to take birth control, you've got to think, could it be my liver? And that's what research is showing us, is that sometimes the liver can't keep up with the estrogens and can't detoxify them to get them out of the body, purify the body. So now we have an estrogen dominance and a progesterone deficiency, which creates problems. So we can take birth control to fix the progesterone problem, but that's still not getting to the root cause of the liver's just not clearing out the estrogens properly. It can lead to irritable bowel syndrome because the toxins can go in and irritate your stomachs. It can cause allergies because the toxins can irritate the nose as well as the lungs, which can lead to asthma or troubles breathing. It can lead to acne and liver spots. It can lead to high cholesterol. So if you have high cholesterol, that can be a sign that your body's just too toxic. It can also lead to inflammation, and like we said earlier, you want to make sure that you get your blood test done for C-reactive protein as well as homocysteine to really find out if you have it. This next slide is 2 mice that were put on the exact same diet. They were put on actually a healthy regimen, a healthy lifestyle. As you can tell, this mouse looks relatively normal and healthy. This mouse is overweight, but the only difference between these 2 mice is they injected this mouse with a toxin that caused inflammation. So the diet's the same, the exercise the same. The only difference is the toxicity and inflammation, and that's what we see in our office all the time. As people tell us they're already exercising, they're eating well, but they're still not getting the results that they want physically or mentally or emotionally. Their bodies just don't feel well. This is a story about Chris Chalmers, who came to my office And when she came in, one of the things I noticed right out of the gate was that she had red cheeks. And whenever I see red cheeks, I've got to think that something's going on inside of her body that's driving inflammation or possibly autoimmune disease. So we did some lab testing with Chris, and what we found is that she indeed did have, on the next slide, Hashimoto's. And this is a blood test, like I said, you can get done at your doctor's office. This Hashimoto's is 125. Anything above 34 is too high. So she's well over the limits. Now this is Chris 4 months later. I want you guys to look at this next slide here. Look at what happens to her immune system. It goes down to 35, which is only one tick above the normal level. So now what we've done is we helped improve her immune function, what's also improved her inflammation levels. Now with Chris, she was already exercising an hour a day. She was already eating a healthy diet, and she had lost 5 pounds in 1 year. But she continued those behaviors and habits, and 4 months later, if you look at this next picture, this is Chris after 4 months. Actually, in 6 months, she ended up losing over 60 pounds. But please understand, I do not have a magic pill. I never gave her a supplement. I never gave her anything that made her lose weight. The reason she lost weight is because she followed the rules of thermodynamics, which state, I eat less calories than I need. I burn more calories than I need. Therefore, I lose weight. But if you do it in a body that's unhealthy, like that mouse, or a body that's toxic, you're not going to lose weight, you're not going to feel as good. With Chris, she had digestive issues, she had hormonal issues that have all resolved as well as her weight's been improved. But that's just the side effect of what we do. This is not what we do. This is what you guys do. This is another patient that we had. I want you to see this next slide. This is a patient that her autoimmune disease was off the charts. She had both markers where Chris only had one. They have both markers that are off the charts. Her inflammation levels are off the charts high, and she had a full-blown candida yeast infection. This candida, not yeast as far as vaginal yeast, but this is just a yeast infection in the entire body, mostly in the gut typically. With all these markers, as we heal the gut, as we get rid of the yeast, it helps the gut become more sealed because, see, this yeast creates cracks and divisions in the intestinal system that allow more leaking. So this patient was also driving their autoimmune disease worse and their inflammation levels. So once we killed the candida, I want you to see this. This is amazing. Look at her post results. Now this is 4 months later, guys. Her autoimmune disease is medically what they would call in remission. Now, I don't believe it's cured, but I do believe that because of stress hits her, if she eats the wrong foods, if her lifestyle gets to the point where it can cause and contribute, it'll turn back on. So it's not that it's gone, it's just turned off right now. So we turned off her immune system, we turned off her inflammation levels, and we helped her eradicate the candida, which has helped change her life. So now she has more energy, she has less bloating and gas, she has no more constipation and diarrhea movements, as well as the brain fog that comes so much often with this inflammation and the swellingness and the achiness of her joints. So if you're feeling like you have any of these symptoms and problems, it's so important you get these things tested, but more importantly, the right treatment. Because I see it all the time, people come and they say, well, I already know I have an autoimmune disease, but my doctors tell me they want me to wait until it gets worse, until they do something. And typical treatments for autoimmune disease or inflammation are NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, sometimes steroids, and even sometimes very powerful immune suppressor drugs, which you don't want. So my question to you guys then is, how do you know? How do you know if something's happening to your body? Well, obviously if you first don't feel well, but the most important thing you need to do is you need to get tested. Now with getting testing, it's so important that you test, don't guess. And that's a model that we have in our clinic. You never guess. I remember one time I had a young girl come to my office and she complained of fatigue. Thankfully, we did a blood test on her, and it turned out that her iron levels were so low that we had to call her on a Saturday afternoon and tell her to go to the hospital to get a transfusion of iron because she could have died of hypoxia because her heart could have quit beating because it had no iron in her body. The iron's what carries the oxygen. So I learned there a valuable lesson. Don't just start grabbing a bunch of supplements for energy. Don't just take a bunch of probiotics because you heard it heals your gut. If you find out what you're dealing with, what it is that you're suffering from, you're going to get more precise treatments that are going to be more effective. Now, lastly, a lot of people, you're probably wondering, what's my first step? Well, the first step is to call our office right now and schedule a consultation. That consultation will be with one of our doctors. We have 3 other doctors other than myself. And we're going to walk you through a thorough consultation. We're going to review your medical history. We're going to talk about what it is that you've been through, what kind of treatments you've gone through, what are some of the natural things that you've done, what are some of the medications you've tried. And then we're going to also talk about your family history. And then from that, I'll let you know, or one of our doctors will let you know, can we help you? Can we accept your case? If we think we can help you, we're going to recommend some additional testing. At that point, we'll tell you what the tests are. We'll let you know the cost of those tests, and we'll let you know which ones. Sometimes we do a blood test, sometimes we do a stool test, sometimes we do a urine hormone test. That it really is endless amount of testing that we can do. We also ask that you bring your old blood work with you so we can look it over, we can review it, and decide what testing we need to order. So what you need to do now is you need to call our office, schedule a consultation. If you decide that you're not ready for a consultation, come to our seminar this Saturday. We'll give you more in-depth information about how does we help. We're actually going to have, I think, 1 or 2 different patients that are going to be speaking at the event, telling you their stories, what they've been going through, and how they've overcome their health issues. Our main job is to inspire and encourage you. You know, so many times in life, the only reason we ever get well is because somebody came in and showed us the way. So I really hope that if this makes sense to you, you give our office a call and we can show you the way. Also, if you have any questions, you can simply reply in the comments section. My staff is back at the office answering any of your questions that you may have. So just go online and do that. But other than that, I am done for the day. I thank you guys and God bless, and I wish you well. Take care.